Welcome into Husker Max today. It is April 1st. No April Fools because we are back. Small hiatus. Sometimes the schedules get a little bit misaligned depending on things going on with the Huskers radio network or potentially spring football and press conferences and open practices. And we will talk a little bit about both of those topics with the way baseball has gone, especially this last weekend, what's coming up this midweek, and also still need to put a little bit of a bow on that West Coast trip because last time we had talked was right before that USC series. A lot has been talked about. Obviously, spring football really got going last week. So Nick's got some thoughts. I've got some thoughts there. We also learned from a CBS report about some potential other ideas on the Husker games. There's some intriguing ones in there I want us to discuss, Nick. But we're going to start with Las Vegas. We're going to start with the crown because Nebraska men's basketball storms back down 11 in the second half, runs away with it, shoots almost 65% in the final 20 minutes, and they are still dancing into the Elite Eight, as we like to call it. Creighton has never played a game as late into April as Nebraska will this week on April 2nd, where they take on the Hoyas of Georgetown. But it was a win yesterday against Bobby Hurley and Arizona State. And Nick, I'll just ask you this simple question. Is the crown fun?
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. It's in Vegas.
Yeah.
Everything in Vegas is fun until you get to day number 3. Then you're like, all right, when do we take off? When do we fly out of here? So, and I believe Fred and the gang got in there on Saturday. And so they had their practice on Sunday. I remember him saying in a previous tournament that they were there for almost 2 weeks in Vegas. That's way too long to be in Vegas. But at this point, you'll take it. And you know how I feel about these, whether we're talking about the old CBI or CIT tournaments that they had, where you actually, as an athletic department, had to pay money to be in those invitationals. It's an invite if you're willing to basically sign a check. This one is in the NIL era, and of course, this is the offshoot of what we saw in the regular season back in November. It's something that I think when you look at the field, and we've talked about this, the blue blood programs, the Villanovas, even the Georgetowns of the world, a lot of Big East flavor in there too, but also programs that I think it's going to be really interesting to see this time next year where they all wind up when it comes to the pecking order of the NCAA tournament. Are these teams, are the majority of this field, are they in the NCAA tournament? Are they all at least in the NIT? And what does this do for the team's future? We've talked about the NIL concept of it and the money that goes into the collective, which is obviously a huge deal. But as far as just seeing some postseason basketball, and it looked like last night, everyone's taking it serious, that the production value was pretty good. They're making a big deal of it. So I think it's okay to get caught up into it, especially when there is, I don't know about you, Caleb, I get a tinge of NCAA tournament burnout when we get before the Final Four weekend. You have the first 2 days of the tournament. Hell, the first weekend of the tournament is one of the best 48 to 72 hours of sports you're going to see. Then after that, after the upsets have wore off and you actually do have really good teams that are playing, and yeah, there's always a good story or two, but this is kind of a sweet spot, in my opinion, of where they're playing this, because I think as some people are getting maybe a little over fatigued when it comes to the NCAA tournament, you have this other alternative that if you are just a hoop head and you want to see something else, here you go. It's in Vegas. They're going to put on a big show. So it is interesting. I was curious how it would be received last night, just from all of those parts of it, not even the competition or how Nebraska played, but just how it was presented. And so far, so good. I thought it looked pretty good last night.
Let's make sure we mention this, because yes, it is the college basketball crown. No, it is not the NCAA tournament. Nobody is watching these games saying this is Duke in Florida and Auburn,
right,
in Houston. Nobody is saying that. You saw some bad basketball, not just in the Nebraska game, but in these other games. You saw long stretches, perhaps 40 minutes of bad basketball. That's what these teams are. Maybe sans Boise State, because they had an actual argument to be in the NCAA tournament. You don't know how far they would have gone, whether it's they're out right away in Dayton or they make a run to the Sweet 16, whatever.
Right.
Nebraska, we saw, hadn't won a game in like 40 some days. The way the season ended, hasn't played in 3 weeks. This is not Sweet 16 NCAA tournament Elite 8 basketball. I get that. It was just fun to see them out there. It was fun to see Bryce Williams stepping into a three and hammering it, to see Cale Jacobson make a good pass in transition, Sam Hoiberg getting a steal, Juwan Gary dunk at the rim, Connor Esigian hit a couple threes. Like, it was just, it's nice to see these guys back, with the understanding that this is not an elite tournament, that this is not, there aren't guys playing right now like there's a legacy on the line in the way that it's an NCAA tournament. That said, there's still something to play for, like you were saying. What kind of a launching point can this be? And I know there's a lot of guys that are leaving. Like, Nebraska's got 7 guys who walked on senior day, and Fred Hoiberg has said there's at least 7 guys that won't be back next year. 2 right up front are Juwan Gary and Bryce Williams. And like, those are your dudes, and you knew those were your tandems. And Bryce has 30 points, 10 free throws is what he was able to knock in, and a lot of that right at the end. But Connor Esigian had 17 points in the second half. Juwan Gary had 18. And he looked fired up from the get-go. But you got a lot of minutes from Cale Jacobson. Is he going to take a next step type of a thing? And you wonder where Sam Hoiberg was. He kind of got turnover prone throughout this year in a way he maybe hadn't been, because he was getting a lot more starts. He was getting more minutes. But is Sam able to take that next step? You went really small ball because Arizona State is playing with like 7 guys. So you barely got minutes from Morgan and Mia and Berke in the second half. Yeah. And if Berke comes back, that's a guy you want to see take another step. Like, where can that step be going into next year? How can you get a launching point out of this week in Las Vegas? Obviously the game last night with Arizona State, but you get Georgetown next on Wednesday.
The short answer that I have right now, and it's not going to be earth-shattering at all, is I really don't know. I don't know if there really is a huge jumping off point when it comes to this. I think the impact of this, in my opinion, is going to be more what it can, first of all, provide financially if you can make it all the way to the end and get that payout. But also, this is where I don't like the format, and I just wish that there was a page taken out of what football does when it comes to all of those little things of supporting the young players and the freshmen, being able to have freshmen eligible for bowl games where it doesn't impact their eligibility. I would have loved to have seen a guy like Nick Janowski. I would have loved to have seen a Braden Frager. I'd love to see those guys be able to have some type of contributions in actual game minutes. Now, are they practicing? Sure. But just in preparation for these games, are they getting game reps? Where I think if you're not going to be in an NCAA tournament setting, but you're still playing in the postseason, what you just laid out there, Caleb, is the future. The guys that won't be here and the guys that will be here that were actually playing in the game. Well, what about the guys that are on that roster that you hope at some point, because this coaching staff was able to recruit at a good clip, that those guys could start getting some of those game reps? That's what I think these types of tournaments that don't really have any type of banners that you can hang, or even if you do hang, nobody's going to be intimidated walking in and saying, oh, you were the college basketball crown champion. I think what it can impact is those young players getting those valuable game reps, going through the preparation, going through the scouting report, going through warmups, and then actually coming off the bench and playing and having to uphold that scouting report. Those things, to me, I think are valuable any moment or any opportunity that you can give these freshmen. But I understand why you don't, because you're trying to preserve red shirts and everything that comes with that. So that part of it is kind of disappointing. So I do wish basketball could get on a similar page as football when it does come to that. Now,
well, and if you go that same route, because first of all, football, anything postseason, anything after the conference championships does not count towards your red shirt.
Mm-hmm.
So think about some of the guys that if you were for Notre Dame this last year, you could have played 8 games total and preserved your red shirt.
Yeah.
4 during the regular season, 4 in the college football playoff. Because you get the 4 in the regular season, that's a third of the season. If basketball were to do this exact same model, it would be 10 regular season games and then anything after the conference tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's wrong with that? I don't think there'd be anything wrong with that at all. Now, it would be a little bit weird if you've got somebody who, say, Kansas brought in some European and they played him 10 games and they're redshirting him and he hasn't played since December 28th. And then all of a sudden he rolls out in the round of 64 and you're like, that's an All-American.
Yeah, but don't you think you could make the distinction if you're the NCAA of saying every tournament but the NCAA and even the NIT, if you want to go that route, if you want to do these types of a collective, the offshoot tournaments, if you want to do those, that's fine. We're not going to count that towards your eligibility. NCAA tournament, that's still, we're going to keep those rules intact. And maybe the NIT, maybe not. I don't know. But I think that would be easy to execute. I just think that
easy in the NCAA. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know those don't often collide together, or logical thinking usually collides. But I just think that there is that extra motivation when you're getting up for these types of tournaments. If you're a coaching staff and you want to see what some of these young guys can do, and you want to see what they can do in a quick turnaround, a tournament setting, because now all of a sudden you've got a Monday game and then Nebraska will turn around and play on Wednesday. Okay, that's a tournament setting type. You get to see how those young players respond. They get some game minutes, but then they recover, they respond, and then they have to play in the next game too. So I think those opportunities that you can give those young players that haven't had that otherwise this season gives you a little bit of a gauge of what you can expect. And as you're also trying to figure out the roster of the guys that you just talked about there, Caleb, of what Nebraska's going to have to replace, you're looking at, do you need to recruit over some of those freshmen when it comes to the transfer portal? Because that's going on right now. So, all right, well, let's look in the transfer portal. Do we like what we have in Janowski? Well, have we seen enough of him? Do we need to recruit over him, or are we good with him? Okay, what about some of the other guys that didn't get a lot of minutes or none at all? Do we need to recruit over them, or do we feel good about what we have? Well, I think a part of that entire evaluation is going to be, could we get them into some games without impacting their red shirt or their eligibility for that season? So I think there are ways that you can improve the overall postseason when it does come to the young players. But I will say this, and I don't know if I haven't watched every press conference from every team that is involved in the Crown leading up to their first game. Doesn't it seem like Nebraska is taking this thing extremely serious, which I like, don't get me wrong, but they're pumped to be in it.
Well, Nebraska doesn't have anyone in the portal. You didn't have Raleigh Wooster. That's an injury. You didn't have Gavin Griffiths yesterday. That's an injury. There's those types of things. And obviously the minute distribution gets changed up in the game. But Nebraska doesn't have anyone in the portal. Everyone else does. There's a reason Arizona State only had 7 scholarship guys available. It's because of the transfer portal. It's because of the NBA draft process. Nebraska is taking this as serious as anyone else is. And I think from a program standpoint, what Fred Hoy, and that's a Fred Hoiberg top-down thing. And he had talked about going into this tournament that it was his leadership group. It was Bryce Williams. It was those guys who said, we want to keep playing. Even if it's going to Las Vegas in this brand new made-up tournament and the potential to make money, whatever it is, and playing a sub 500 Arizona State team first. We want to play in that. And that's great to see, because that's a culture thing that I know you're 6 years into the Fred Hoiberg era, and there were a lot of questions as things were going through the problems when you had the losing streak, and then you have the complete dip and everything falling off at the end. There are questions. Has Fred Hoiberg kind of peaked to where it's, you get there once and then you're not going to make it back to the NCAA tournament because you're just not going to have the horses. You don't have the culture. But I think what you saw from this team is that they do have that, and they've been resilient, and they want to play in this game. in a way that it seems like these other teams don't. And I know, so Bobby Hurley, the Arizona State coach, he talked in post game, and one of the first things he said was, thank you to everyone who's coming out and playing in this, because there are teams that turned this down, and this is a good opportunity for our teams to continue playing and like build something up for the program for the next season. From Nebraska's standpoint, I don't think anybody benefited from that game more yesterday than Cale Jacobson, because I don't know where he fits in next year, because we're a week into the transfer portal. We don't know who's coming. Like there's that point. Fred Hoiberg has to get at least 7 guys, you know, in the transfer portal. I don't know what Cale Jacobson looks like on next year's team. I don't know if, and this isn't saying that he's going to transfer, but you know that Cale Jacobson could go tear it up at South Dakota State.
Yep.
Like he could go, he'd be probably a really good, one of the first guys off the bench at Omaha who just made the NCAA tournament. There is a really good place at Division I basketball for Cale Jacobson. I don't know what it is in Lincoln, because we don't know what the roster is next year. But those 22 minutes yesterday, a game high 5 assists, he's showing something, not just to potentially other programs, but he's showing something to Fred Hoiberg that says, I'm here. I love playing here. And if it is still he was averaging 4 minutes a game during the season, but if it's 5 to 10 minutes a game during the season and you need me in spots, I'll go do that and I'll be efficient with it. And if you think back, that's what Sam Hoiberg was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It was spots, and some of that was injuries, but now you've got regular starts out of Sam, and you're probably going to want to recruit over both of those guys. But like I said, we're a week in. We have no idea what the roster is going to look like next year, because there has been zero portal movement for the Huskers, in or out.
And that's, again, going back to my point of even the young players, but I think Jacobson is a good example of that evaluation process of being able to extend minutes. What was the most we ever saw Cale Jacobson playing in the regular season? Usually when someone got in foul trouble, or I remember he had to come in when Berkey got hurt with the ankle injury for maybe the last minute of that game. So you're able to stock minutes. You're able to add minutes, give them a workload, and that's an evaluation to me. What you just said right there, Caleb, is exactly what this coaching staff is going through.
His previous high, he had played 16 minutes against North Florida.
Okay, North Florida. Yeah, there you go. But in conference play.
Yeah, you got to go way back for that, because it had been, he didn't play for the last 3 games of the regular season. 1 minute against Northwestern, like you mentioned, 2 against Illinois, 3 Wisconsin, 2 Purdue, 1 Iowa, 8 against Southern U. So you're back into before the calendar flipped. Yeah. Like those are the minutes that he was getting, and then to come out and play 22 in Vegas.
Yeah. And so for me, I think that's an example of where this tournament serves a really good purpose, even if you don't win it. That if you have that opportunity as a coaching staff, when you're in the midst of trying to figure out what you want and what you can overlook in the transfer portal, seeing what some of your younger guys that up until this point have not had an opportunity, or at least a solid workload in game repetitions, you can see what they're about. I think there's a lot of people that, whether you're coaching at the pro, the college, or even the high school level, you'll see certain guys in practice and maybe they leave you flat. Maybe they make a lot of mistakes. Maybe you're just indifferent on what they can do. Maybe your confidence level, you're indifferent on that of what they can do. But then they get into a game and it all clicks. And all of a sudden, things that you were not seeing in practice, things you were not seeing in scout, all of those different things that lack game sense of urgency, all of a sudden you see it, and you see how certain people respond. And it can work the other way, where you have guys that are, man, they're balling out in practice. Okay, now we have an opportunity to play them in the postseason. And then they get in a game, and all of a sudden what they built up completely goes by the wayside. It can work both ways, but the bottom line is you're getting an evaluation. And that's what I think these types of tournaments are so critical for those younger players, especially for coaches that have to make snap decisions right now, because if there's somebody that's on their radar in the transfer portal, they've either got to make a move or move on from him, because if they feel that they have that roster spot already on their current roster, then you set your sights and focus on another area of need. And Nebraska has a couple of those.
Several of those, and that'll be something that we'll probably be able to get into. Not today because they're still playing in the Crown. I don't want to get into transfer portal. They're still playing games. 8:30 Central tip against Georgetown. Quarterfinals, Elite Eight.
They're dancing,
Wednesday,
baby. They're still
Las
dancing.
Vegas. That'll be on FS1, and also you can listen to Kent Pavelka, Jake Muehlheisen, and the whole Huskers Radio Network gang on that one. All right, talking about stepping up and finding a way. And I want to go back and put a bow on the USC trip and then the West Coast trip. But a West Coast team coming to Lincoln, and you have the stunner, what was it, 7-3 on Friday, number 5 Oregon State. And then the shellacking on Saturday, just leaving dudes on base while Oregon State hits, for them, a school record 8 home runs. And then you turn it around on Sunday, and so many 2-out rallies, not just hitting guys around, but hitting at a really high batting average as a team with runners in scoring position and 2 outs, and getting a 16-7 win on Sunday, a weekend series win over a top 5 team for the first time in 14 years. For you, like, you're there, you're watching it, and you've watched the struggles for this team. For me, kind of an outsider, it just seemed like, oh, they're actually hitting the ball. Like, they're hitting the ball. There's timely hitting. For you, you're there. What was the difference for this team in the series over the weekend?
Clutch hitting. I think that was the other part of. Here's something that was lost a little bit on Saturday's shellacking, is the anomaly that the ball is going to leave the yard that many times. That is, I don't care how good, average, or bad of a baseball team you are, you're never that bad where you're allowing the ball to get elevated that many times. And I don't want to make it sound like Oregon State, they were all wind-aided home runs, because that wasn't the case at all either. That was one of those days where there was no real explanation of a team just going to work like that. But despite all of that,
I'll give you this real quick on that Saturday game. In my write-up, because Nebraska played so well on Friday, I started out my Saturday write-up with Lady Luck decided to change horses from Friday to Saturday. One of the first comments was, oh, it's all luck. And I'm like, they hit 8 home runs.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
That's not a normal thing. They didn't get torpedo bats from the Yankees all of a sudden.
Well, the part of it, and I like that, by the way, the part of it is they had the exact same amount of hits that Nebraska had.
Yes.
Unfortunately, out of their 12 hits, 8 of them were home runs. For Nebraska, they only had 1 in that game. Mm-hmm. So you're trying to decipher what was real with that team. Well, let's use the Friday and Saturday. What was real with that team on Friday, talking about Nebraska, and what was real on Saturday. And then you look at Sunday. But the Friday-Saturday part of it, Friday felt more like a college baseball upset. Saturday looked more like a very good baseball team with a heavy response, but that response in the form of 8 home runs is still a little bit out there, a little bit crazy. So, yeah, there's some luck involved with that. Now, is there anything about Oregon State that says they're lucky or they're overrated? No, not at all, because
they're a good team.
100%. I've had a chance now to see Irvine, which is a top 15 team. Had a chance to watch Vanderbilt with my own eyes. That is a solid team, because you look at the people they throw out there in the mound. You look at the guys that are in the batter's box. Those are grown men. Those are guys that you're going to see at the next level. There are good teams. Nebraska and the schedule that they played is good. I even thought Chalowski from UCLA, the shortstop, he is a big-time player. So, and USC had a couple of dudes too. Hedges is a great player as well. Watching Oregon run arm after arm out there and looking at the size of these guys, looking at what they're hitting in the strike zone, looking at what they're bringing velocity-wise, all that stuff is no joke. It's not a fluke. So the biggest takeaway from the entire weekend, from both Friday and then Sunday, was clutch hitting. At some point, you're getting pounded so badly of what was happening on Saturday. It's only natural, in my opinion, that you're going to lose a little bit of the confidence in the batter's box, or the exact opposite. You're going to have too much sense of urgency knowing that you're trying to chase a huge number that you're trying to do that in one swing when there's, no such thing as an 8-run home run. So I think the mental approach, once that thing started getting further and further and further out of reach for Nebraska, I think you're looking to get out of that game and just get to Sunday. You're like, okay, we've been whooped. They got us. Hat tip to you. Now let's play for a series win on Sunday. And this was the other thing about it, Caleb. We didn't know if we were going to play on Sunday. So with the temperature, not thinking that it would ever get to the desired real feel that it needed to be at, we're wondering, okay, is this thing going to be played? So if we're all wondering that up in the press box, both teams are, especially Nebraska that just got socked in the mouth the day before, are sitting there wondering, are we going to play? Then you start hearing, okay, maybe we will. All right, maybe we won't. For them to get up the way that they did, and then for that game to be this, I think this was probably one of the ultimate mid-season tests for where this team is, and Will Bolt seeing how many guys are still on board. That was one of the best seesaw affairs that I've seen with this team, and against that type of opponent where Nebraska would respond. Then Oregon State would respond. Then Nebraska. Then Oregon State had the counterpunch. It was punch, counterpunch. And then all of a sudden that 7th inning happened. And just like I said, kind of fluky what happened on Saturday with the home runs of Oregon State. That 7th inning was ridiculous because it starts off with 2 strikeouts. And you're thinking, oh, man, Oregon State, they got the lead. They're going to go in to the 8th inning with the lead. This isn't looking good. And then all of a sudden you get a walk, 2 hit batters. But then what isn't a fluke is Tyler Stone. The guy has been locked in ever since he's had more consistent at bats working off of that shoulder injury. And the dude's not 100%. He's not going to be. But he, in my opinion, has set the tone for what has happened in front and behind him offensively, because all of a sudden you're looking at Dylan Carey's driving the ball. He's creeping near 300 right now. Devin Nunez, who has continued to stay above 300. Caden Brumball, he fell down, but you're also seeing guys like Rhett Stokes had a big knock. He had Riley Silva's even getting on base. Riley Silva's hitting just below 300 right now. So you're seeing guys around what Tyler Stone, that example that he set. Even Case Anderson being healthy again. Case Anderson had an impact this weekend as well. Those types of guys, and I'll talk about one guy in particular here in just a moment. Those types of guys for this team to get to where they want to be. For this team to first, they got to get to 500. But for this team to get to where they want to be, and there's still some time, all of those guys I mentioned, they got to be a part of this offense like they were this weekend. And then the other guy, Gabe Swanson, who is working off that illness that he had in California as well. And we know he's been hot and cold this season. If you can get him, I don't even say he's got to be at 250 or 275 in the season. If you can get him solidly around 225 to 230, but he's giving you some good slug, all of a sudden you got that offense that I think everybody thought we would see. And you go up from, what was it? Were they hitting 212, 230 at one point? Well, between 212, 230. They're up at 259 now. Okay. And I know that's not huge, but all of a sudden you're looking at, all right, 225 isn't looking good. All of a sudden you're basically at 260. That is a good thing for this team. And the slugging numbers are way better. The runners in scoring position, that batting average took a huge jump. And we saw that collectively against a quality pitching staff. So I say that 2 things about it is it's got to mean something. You cannot let what happened this weekend just be remember that one weekend where Nebraska unexpectedly beat Oregon State and that's it. You got to be able to look at that and be like, remember when that happened? Yeah, that's when their season really got going. That's the narrative.
None of this counts in the Big Ten standings.
Absolutely. Yeah. But what it does do, and this is my second point, what it does do is all of a sudden now today, you've got another matchup against a top 50 RPI team against Creighton. This team should be very, very pumped up to be seeing the old Blue Jays. It's going to be crappy weather, but that doesn't matter. Then you still got Kansas. That's another great opportunity for an RPI. You still got Kansas State coming to Lincoln later on in the season as well. You got some midweek opportunities that all of a sudden Nebraska jumped 44 points in the RPI. If they beat Creighton, they probably are knocking on the door of the top 50. And then if they're able to get a win, say, against Kansas or Kansas State or both, yeah, you got to be above 500 to qualify for the NCAA tournament. But all of a sudden, you have now taken care of some major RPI opportunities. But to your point, you also got to do that in conference play.
You talk about that 7th inning, because I just want to give this stat really quick, because that was the second time. There were a couple of times in the game that Oregon State took the lead and Nebraska answered immediately in the bottom half. Went and did it. You had it happen earlier in the game, but then you had it happen in that 7th inning. First 2 batters strike out. And then you get 9 runs on 5 hits. And it's aided by 1 error within there.
Mm-hmm.
But how many times has Nebraska had that opportunity and not answered the bell, or had the runners on, or had 2 guys strike out and then you get the bases loaded and then you get a 3rd strikeout, or you hit into a easy ground ball or a pop fly or something? On Saturday, left 12 runners on base. On Sunday, just 3.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it was all the timely hitting for the Big Red this weekend. Before looking to this afternoon, not tonight, this afternoon and tomorrow with the Creighton, Omaha in-state midweek games, just real quick, kind of put a bow on the way the West Coast trip went. The last time we talked was right before they were set to play against USC and finish up all of those games where they played UCLA, Pepperdine, and then USC on that weekend, and then came back with Kansas State before getting into this last beginning this homestand.
Yeah. A lot of what's plagued this team throughout the year. That's why this last weekend was so refreshing to see it turn for Nebraska with runners in scoring position. But those RISP numbers were terrible. The bullpen was getting beat around a lot. You were getting some quality starting pitching. Will Walsh, I was so happy to see him get the win against Oregon State on Friday, because that kid has come in that Friday spot because of McConaughey's injury, and he's given Nebraska several chances to win. He gave him a chance to win against UCLA that Friday night. He gave him a chance to win against USC on Friday night as well. I'm glad to see that he got the run support, but that's unfortunately been, I think, in my opinion, a lot of the issues has been when you get a good pitching performance, it's not supported in the batter's box. And then vice versa. When you actually have guys that are hitting, we've seen the bullpen really go sideways. So it's finding that connectivity with this team, being able to have the good pitching on top of the good hitting. Friday was exactly what you want to see. Okay, yeah, you'll take what happened on Sunday, but up until the 3rd, and I'll give Jackson Brockett some credit, up until the 3rd, you knew Oregon State coming off of that Saturday, they were looking to pick up from where they left off. So Jackson had to be pinpoint with glove side fastball, and he was doing that extremely well against those right-handed hitters. So he at least calmed them down for a couple of innings and allowed Nebraska to take the first lead of the game, which I think was huge in that game. But we've seen where it's been a bad start by this guy or this guy, and the offense has maybe been slow to get going, but by the time they do get going, there's such a big hole because the other team has been able to pounce on some pitching that was struggling that day. So finding that good start with the solid offense, again, Friday is exactly how you want to do it, because you got a great start out of Will Walsh. You got the timely hitting from Nebraska. They were able, and this is the thing about Friday that I loved. And you're going to see this a little bit more when you're going up against a really quality arm, and Segura was a good starting pitcher for Oregon State, is, yeah, you might get blanked the first couple of innings. Nebraska was able to get 1, 1, and 2 between innings 3, 4, and 5.
Uh-huh.
You're getting offense in the middle of the game, as opposed to maybe getting a run here in the first or second and then being completely absent until maybe the 7th or 8th inning, where you get nothing at all. And then all of a sudden you get 1 run, but you're already trailing by 5. Having the offense throughout the game the way that they did, I think, was also big for them. So that Friday, that's what you want to see. Good pitching supported by what you're doing in the batter's box.
All right. So that good pitching part, and that's the part where I maybe not so much this season, because for whatever reason has played well in the midweek, but in previous years, and especially when you're taking on the in-state teams, Creighton this afternoon at 2:30 at Haymarket Park, and then tomorrow, currently scheduled for 6 o'clock at Omaha, Tal Anderson. There's a lot of times these midweek games turn into Johnny Holstaff.
Yeah.
For pitching. You might throw. There are times where Nebraska and Creighton have combined to throw like 15 guys between the two of them. You've got that game this afternoon and then a game at Omaha tomorrow. And like you said, Creighton could be really good for the RPI. Omaha, dangerous. They won at LSU. So like these are a couple of really good teams. It's not just roll over. Here's the other guys in the state. These games have been really competitive. And for whatever reason, I was talking with somebody during it was getting to the end of basketball season, and for whatever reason, the Omaha games have gotten really heated the last couple of years. So you've got a home game with Creighton this afternoon, and then you're going up to take on the Mavericks tomorrow. How do you gauge these games on where they are for this team, and what are your expectations for back-to-back midweek in-state for the in-state games?
I know coaches involved in this, whether we're talking about Darren Erstad, Ed Service, Bobby Harold, now Evan Porter, and Will Bolt. I know they'll always tell you records don't really matter when they see each other. There's so much familiarity with one another. A lot of these guys have played high school ball together, played summer ball together, travel ball together. So there's that familiarity. But once they start, it's a pride thing. But I do think, and I'm sure that's true. I'm sure you do throw out the records and the previous weekend's outcome, whoever each of these teams played before they play each other. But I do think, and this is going to be fascinating to watch today and tomorrow, is Nebraska should be on cloud nine. Nebraska had, and you mentioned Omaha beating LSU. Nebraska collectively has more big-time wins than what Omaha was able to do against a very good LSU team. Nebraska has much more big-time wins than what Creighton has. Creighton got Kansas State. Okay, they got one there. But the Vanderbilt win, the series win against Oregon State. Okay, those are big-time wins right there. And for me, I look at it as if you're Nebraska, you go in and you've got the bully mentality. And they should. And they should always have that. But more so now than ever because of how that team performed with their backs up against the wall, and maybe their season on the line against Oregon State, that they were able to come through. This team should be playing as such. And they should be looking at Creighton that way today. They should be looking at Omaha that way today. And so then when you factor that part of it in, the other team knows, all right, these guys they're walking in, they're cocky now. They think they beat Oregon State. We're going to try to get under their skin. We'll do some things to really try to chirp at them a little bit. And then before you get that's where the familiarity comes in because they know each other. And so when one guy's chirping in the dugout or you're maybe pulling this little stunt in the game to break up a pitcher's rhythm, or maybe there's a bat flip here and there, it just conjures up so much more emotion than it would against, say, a Michigan or against a Rutgers, because you play those teams every year, but you actually not only play Omaha and Creighton every year, but you know those guys. Yeah. And even though there's respect, and I know that Will Bolt respects Ed Service and Will Bolt respects Evan Porter and vice versa, you start playing, I think those coaches also feed off of the players' energy too, because all of those coaches, Ed Service in his last year with Creighton, Evan Porter, I know this to be true, Will Bolt especially true, all of those coaches they're dog competitors too. They just show it in different ways, but they are freaking competitors. So the players take the cue off them, but I think during the game, sometimes the coaches take the cue off the players as well.
Help me understand this. And I think I've got a decent idea because so many of the guys played with or against each other in high school ball, in Legion ball, in travel ball. And not to say that it's not with Creighton, but for whatever reason, the Nebraska-Omaha games the last couple of years, they've been heated. There's been a lot of jawing. There's been a lot of talking even after the game gets done. Like, I remember the Omaha catcher yelling at Nebraska's team, and the game just ended. Like, is it all because of the familiarity, or is there, and I'd love it to be this, is there a real, like, fuel behind the in-state rivalry?
I think in baseball, yeah. I think in baseball because...
Yeah, and I'm not it's not every sport, but
right.
But for these particular teams, this is what we've seen.
Yeah, and the familiarity, I think knowing those guys, having players on Nebraska and them knowing some of the Omaha players as well. The best way I could describe this is when Colorado decided they were going to set their sights on Nebraska as a football rival. That was cute. Everyone was laughing at it. Oh, good for you. Hey, everybody needs goals, right? It wasn't until Colorado beat Nebraska that all of a sudden that got under their skin, and it got under the fan base's skin. And then all of a sudden, they're getting mad. And then the Colorado fans are kind of sitting there laughing, and the players are laughing. They know, hey, we got it. We got their attention now. Same thing when UNO finally beat Nebraska in baseball at the Division I level. When both teams were Division I schools, and Omaha was beating Nebraska, was getting Nebraska in a couple of games, and all of a sudden they feel, all right, we've been doing this for decades now. And Nebraska's like, who the hell are you guys? You guys, okay, you got us on one day. But Omaha's right, and Nebraska's right. And then they start clashing a little bit. That's when the talking gets a little bit louder. That's when the bat flips are pimped just a little bit more. That's when you've got maybe a high and tight fastball that got away from a guy. Maybe there's a little extra stare there too. So those emotions that I think all started when Omaha got Nebraska as a Division I program. When they finally got that win, and they were talking, and they should. That's a big win for that program. Then they were able to do it again. All of a sudden, you're Nebraska. You're not happy about that. But what else can you do? You have to sit there. You have to watch them celebrate like they won Game 7, and you've got to look at yourself and say, how the hell did we let this happen? That gets to you. And the team that just won, they know that. Even if they're getting beat the next year in a game, they're still going to talk because they're going to try to take you out of your game. So there's that little psychological back and forth that goes on between these two teams. That's where I think Omaha and Nebraska have become a little bit more aggressive, a little more volatile than what we've seen in years past.
My hope between all three of the programs is that because of taking those games so seriously, they raise their level of play, and it takes all three of them up a level, not just for those games, but for the rest of their seasons. Because I'd love to see all three in-state teams in postseason play, and there is a world out there somewhere. There is a universe where it is Nebraska, Creighton, and Omaha in the College World Series together, and the state just on fire in July. And yes, the odds of that extremely small. I understand that, but in whatever universe that is, that place is hopping. Like Rosenblatt is rising from the grave. Like that place is like, you know what? I need to be here for this.
I think just having two of the three would be.
Oh, I think so.
Earth shattering.
I think so too. I want all three. Give me all of them. And you know what? Go ahead and throw in like a Kansas. Give me another regional team in there too, and let the place just go berserk. This afternoon, 2:30 against Creighton. Tomorrow, 6:00 at Omaha. It is spring football, so we do need to chat about that just a little bit. We've gotten to hear from Matt Rule. We've gotten to hear from Dana Holgerson, Emmett Johnson, Dylan Raiola, a few guys. My initial takeaway from hearing a lot of the talk is just that, and getting to see a little bit of an open practice, is that there's a lot of work to be done in that they're figuring out what this team is going to be. Because you have to still make cuts. You still have to get it down to the 105, but you don't have everybody playing right now, everyone practicing, because you have injuries or you have guys that might not be on campus. You have another transfer portal window coming up. You don't know if all of a sudden you might add somebody or someone might leave. So there's still a little bit of the roster building, but also who's taking some of those next steps? What does a year two Dylan Raiola look like for that quarterback room? And now you have Dana Holgerson with the offense, and you're going through your installs, and Heinrich Harburg making a position transition to tight end. How much of a weapon can he be? You've got these new wide receivers. You've got a reworked defensive line. You have several new coaches. This is exactly what you need spring ball for, to go through and get all this worked out. Right. We're a week into that this afternoon, or not this afternoon, later this morning. We will get to hear from defensive coordinator John Butler, as well as a couple of players. Later on this week, we'll get quarterback coach Glenn Thomas and offensive line coach Donovan Raiola, and we'll get Coach Rule this Saturday. So a little bit of something every couple of days. A week into this, what have you been able to glean from what you've been hearing?
Do we just tiptoe around the obvious because it's been beaten to death, and that's the body of Dylan Raiola?
Oh, yeah. Like we can jump right into that, because depending on who it is, they have taken it so far in talking about Dylan Raiola, and you could see it. It looked like a guy who could have been fitter, but when he got up there, and you hear Holgerson talk about how he was doing like boxing and all of these things through spring break and going through the off season and all of the things that they were doing. And you see Dylan Raiola up there, and you go, he looks fitter.
He does.
And this, to me, this is a really hard, this is a hard conversation to have because you're talking about young people and you're talking about their weight and and specifically like 18, not just 18 to 23-year-olds, but 18 to 19-year-olds. Like you're talking about that. And I get it. And I know in football, and there have been times where so-and-so player showed up to fall camp, they were overweight and they got sent back. And you talk about that. And it's like, there's the part where we need to separate a little bit on where we're at as individuals, because I don't like talking about people's weight. There's a reason that I have avoided so much of that conversation. But we can get to this part. Dylan Raiola absolutely looked fitter when he was at the microphone this last week. 100%. And you have to imagine that is going to help him going into his sophomore year.
I think the reason it becomes a talking point is, well, Matt Rule set the tone. He was pretty ticked about how that narrative was. And he wanted to make sure that people knew. I didn't say he was 240. I just said he can't play at 240. But you could tell he was pretty upset about that. And I think there was all of a sudden this narrative, and God rest his soul, that all of a sudden Dylan Raiola was looking like Jared Lorenzen, the old Kentucky quarterback that passed away but was so overweight. You know, Hefty the Lefty is what they called him, or the Pillsbury Throw Boy. I mean, he wasn't – Dylan, you could tell, like a lot of freshmen are getting their body right. A lot of freshmen that, you know what, yeah, they worked out in high school and they did things, but now all of a sudden they're being held to a different physical standard when it comes to putting the right type of weight on, losing the right type of weight, where to put the muscle and mass gain, all of those things, basically getting connected to your strength, conditioning, and nutrition folks that you have those resources. And I thought Dylan was very candid. I really liked when he talked about it. When they asked how it was going, he said, well, quite frankly, it sucks. It sucks because I'm doing all this, and it's a good 4 or 5 weeks before you see any type of results, if not longer. But then once I saw the results, man, I was totally hooked in everything. I thought what he said is something that we have all gone through at some point of our life, in our non-athletic life of we're like, I need to drop a few pounds. And you're sitting there for a month doing everything you're supposed to be doing. You're like, where's the results? And then all of a sudden that one day you see it, you're like, oh, okay, now it's easy to go. But for him particularly, we know the things that probably could improve to get him to that first round draft pick type level quarterback that Nebraska feels not only they were getting, but that they still have. And it's the footwork. It's being nimble in the pocket. And I'm no strength and conditioning coach or nutritionist or anything that comes to the body mechanisms that would give me any type of PhD. But I know if you're lighter, those feet should also be lighter as well, as opposed to if you're a little heavier. So I think that's a positive development. But yes, not only did he look better, the kid looks cut. The kid looks good.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think he looked that bad. So it's always one of those things when you lose weight, people are like, man, did you lose some weight? You're looking good. And then they always follow up, not that you looked bad before, but you look better now. That's what Dylan does. Not that he looked awful before. He just looks better right now. But you could tell the type of, I think, protection from the head coach. He was not happy with the narrative that was going around, but also I think the honesty from Dana Holgerson of, yeah, this is what he needed to do. And then what Dylan told us too. I think it should be talked about from the simple standpoint of who is the one guy more than anybody that is important for him to take a big step forward from year 1 to year 2. It's Dylan. And this is part of him taking that step.
Absolutely. And something else that came out this last week, I'll ask you about this on Dana Holgerson talking about his run game, because that was a real fear a lot of Husker fans brought up at the last third of the season. And then you got the bowl game on. So we had 4 games where Dana Holgerson as the interim OC, and then he's the full-time OC. Was that it was going to go full air raid. 5 wide, sling it all over the place. Now, Holgerson said this last week, he's got no interest in his old air raid roots, but it's whatever the defense is giving you. If if they take away all of the run and you have a 1,500-yard rusher, which Husker fans would absolutely take, Emmett Johnson going over 1,500 yards on the ground this year, absolutely. But if they're taking that away, he's got so much pass game scheme within him and being able to dial all of that up. And I think you've got all of these weapons outside as well, that he's fine if the run game gets taken away. He said, if you need to run the ball, you need to run the ball. That's what it is. But I like that it's, and we're going to have to see what it looks like, because he even said this last week. If you know what the offense is going to look like against Cincinnati and Arrowhead, your guess is as good as mine. But the way he's talking about it sounds like whatever's available, and having a smart quarterback like Dylan Raiola up there being able to get you into different looks depending on what the defense is giving you, you might have a game where you throw for 400 yards and rush for 80, and you might have a game where you rush for 350 and pass for 150. Like, you might have those games with a super bad, like, it looks bad as an imbalance with what your offense is doing. But if it's successful and it's scoring points, at the end of the day, I think that's what Holgorsen wants and isn't going to get locked into. And this was a critique of his predecessor as the offensive coordinator and play caller. All right, wherever we are, guess it's gonna have to be a screen, and Thomas Fedoni, go run lateral right now. We're gonna get sucked into that. It's gonna be a 4th and half a yard. Let's go out of shotgun. Right. I think it's going to be, what is the defense giving Holgorsen and this offense in a way that maybe we haven't seen for a play caller in a while.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of the misconception of the air raid concepts that Dana Holgorsen has had. Is if you look at Texas Tech, their running game was the short pass under Mike Leach. Then as he gets to West Virginia, there's a little bit more of the actual handoff. And then by that time, you've evolved to, okay, no more short passes when it comes to our running game. We're still going to throw the ball when we feel we have to, but the running game is going to set that up. It's going to be critical of that. And yeah, do we want our running backs to be able to catch the ball in the backfield? You're damn right that we do, because we're going to put speed on a linebacker and we're going to be able to win those battles. So I want running backs that can catch the ball as well. He knows exactly not only where he's evolved as an offensive mind, but what I think more importantly too, where the college game has evolved to, that the days of being able to, okay, we got to milk the clock. So on 1st and 10, we're going to throw it 3 yards in the backfield, and that's going to be our running game. You got to actually physically hand the ball off. And I thought his observation, and again, going back to Dylan Raiola and some of the things that we probably don't discuss enough that make him a difference maker at that position compared to previous quarterbacks that have played the position at Nebraska, or just overall his own peers in college football, is what Dana, I thought, brought up of the ability to be a pocket passer, but also being able to go from shotgun to under center and really not having any type of change in his type of game, which I think is huge, because there's probably a lot of occasions where you see a guy go under center, and as a defense, not just what you have scouted the week before, but you understand tendencies. Okay, if he goes under center, he's going to do this. He's going to open this way. This is where this play most likely is going, as opposed to shotgun where, all right, they might run out of this, but most likely he's going to want to maybe roll to his strong side. He's going to want to throw that way, or he's going to want to live in the pocket. When you can do both and not really give any type of tells, I think that's huge. And I think that's something that Dana Holgorsen really needs, that versatility in his quarterback when it does come to running this offense, because there is that emphasis on the running game. But here's the other thing, Caleb, that I would say, I don't necessarily know if Dana Holgorsen is saying that as much if they don't feel like they've got an offensive line that is going to take a major step forward. And we're already hearing about Rocco Spindler, who is making his presence known. He's taken on a lot of that leadership role there, especially in the spring with a lot of the veterans that are unavailable because of injury. Right. And then you got Elijah Pritchett, who is a stud. So you've got two. Not just, oh, they come from Alabama. Oh, and they come from Notre Dame. No, these guys played and started there. One guy played and started in the national championship as well. And the other guy was starting every Saturday in the SEC. Those guys are on your offensive line, alongside with what I think are some pretty hungry young linemen like a Grant Bricks. Seeing those guys starting to come up. Everybody who had a chance to see Grant Bricks were like, damn, that dude, again, kind of like Dylan. We knew he was big before,
Yeah.
Like we knew that, the body was okay. Have you seen what he's done in just a year in the weight room though with that at Nebraska? Oh man, okay, give me some more of that guy up front helping out. So I think there is a more emphasis and maybe confidence is the better way, not emphasis, because I think the emphasis has always been there. Confidence with what they can do in the running game in this air raid attack with Donovan Raiola, who I think also has a great relationship there with Dana Holgorsen. I think those two, just the way that we've heard Dana talk, he brings up Raiola a lot. I think there is a good relationship and a good connection there where they feel they've got what they need up front to be able to successfully have that balance that this offense needs.
Like I said, we're going to get to hear from some more coaches a little bit later on today. So check back at Husker Max and also here on the Husker Max YouTube page for that video. The next open practice will be in a week, this next Tuesday. And then after that, it will be so April 8th and April 15th. We'll get a look at a couple of the open practice portions before the Husker games on April 26th. CBS Sports went ahead and did a FOIA. They got some emails on the potential other activities that were all pitched around for the Husker games. And this was fun. Now, there's a big headliner in those with potentially inviting President Donald Trump. And then right after that, a potential welcome back to Bo Pelini with a plush cat giveaway. That part was getting buried, that there was going to be a giveaway in those discussed. Those are very small on the possibility of those would have even happened. But they were on the list. They carry the headlines. They carried the headline in the story that I wrote at huskermax.com as well. But for real things that could have potentially been going on besides what the Husker games have, where you've got the skills competition, you've got the garage sale, soccer exhibition, food trucks, the Osborne Legacy Complex tours, and the volleyball match later on in the day. Other ideas with the dodgeball, youth pump pass and kick competition, John Cook roping exhibition, a concert, sorority tug of war, fastest student on campus race, fans being free to come down and cut a section of the turf.
Yeah, that would go well.
A demolition derby, because they're fine with the turf getting messed up right now.
Where did the BMX bike exhibition come in, by the way?
I have no idea. Somebody's got a kid who obviously does that on the weekends. They're like, hey, wouldn't this be kind of cool? Go-kart race.
This was a no idea is a bad idea type of meeting. And Brandon Meyer was taking all of the ideas.
I love it. And Brandon is so good with that, with the stuff, because I've talked with him so many times as a former person working in radio and the Huskers and having the go-between in the Huskers radio network. Brandon, awesome to work with. But just all of these ideas on there. And there's one, like, Matt Rule is still pushing the media flag football game.
Yeah.
Because he wants Steve Sipple catching punts or something.
I do too. I want to see Sip. Would Sip fair catch it? We don't know.
I would fair catch it. I ain't getting hit. I learned my lesson in 7th grade when I didn't fair catch the first punt in the first game I played against St. Paul. I got run over and the coach goes, that was pretty dumb, wasn't it? And I was like, I will fair catch every single time. I don't care how much room there is. I didn't like that. So yes, I would be interested to see what so much of this looks like. What I do like in all of this, and obviously, like I said, there's big headlines that get carried in this when you're talking in today's political climate, but you're talking about people of a certain stature in what their positions are within the world, or what their positions were within Husker Nation as a former coach. I like that when you're looking at this week and you've decided that you're not going to play a spring game, because there's a lot of comments. Oh, here's a great idea. Just play a game. Cool. They already decided they weren't doing that. Here's the ideas that you're replacing this day with. I like that, as you said, there's no stupid ideas. There's no stone unturned on what can we do? What are the options that we can throw out there and discuss and put together a full day, which I'm excited for this day. I want to see what it looks like before I make a final judgment. I'm excited for the Husker games. I like that Brandon and all of the folks within the Husker administration went through and said, let's throw it all at a wall and then discuss from there. And I think they put together a good day from it.
Yeah, I think the first week of May is when they are going to sit down and say, here's what we liked, here's what happened, here's what we didn't like, here's what we now know we can legitimately do in the future as well. There are some, I think there are some fantastic ideas. The other one that we didn't talk about, I actually, when I saw it on the list, I think it was number 6 on the list, was the soccer field goals versus the penalty kicks. So you're going to have soccer players hit field goals, and then you're going to have the football kickers actually kick penalty kicks. And I think that would be so much fun to see. I've always wanted to see, are there some legs on the soccer team, both men and women, that I know the men have the club teams, but men and women that you could, in dire circumstances, you could always ask, hey, we need you to come in and kick some field goals.
You had to do that a few years ago.
Exactly. we remember when they were, it was like the old movie Necessary Roughness, where they were having open football tryouts, and then they brought in Kathy Ireland to kick the field goals.
It was Waldock?
Yes. Yeah. And then, well, gosh, how many, that was what, was that 2019? Is when they went through that many kickers. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that, I think that would be a lot of fun. And we've seen some of the ideas that were there that are actually going to be in play. You and I, we love the garage sale idea. Yep. I think the tours to the Tom Osborne Legacy Complex is going to be a real big eye opener for people who have purchased tickets to see that and see that just amazing facility. But this is where you do have to have your creative think tank thinking, all right, it's not just us. We're not trying to do something, just say, hey, look at us over here. We're just trying to engage with the fans, give them the access that they feel they get on the spring game, where, what do people always say? The reason I like the spring game is because I can't maybe afford to go to a regular fall Saturday. So this allows me and the family to come and watch some type of a game atmosphere. They'll create the band, the pageantry, they'll have stuff like that. I just think that this is another way to really spread your wings and find different ways to engage other than just you sitting in your seat at Memorial Stadium and watching a controlled scrimmage. This way you can see the personalities, because I think that's another big thing about this entire generation of student athletes. And I thought Matt Rule brought up a good point of these guys, they always have their helmets on, so you don't really get a chance to see what they look like. Yeah. This is a program that really prides itself on its community involvement and its community engagement, that this is a perfect way for them to do that, but also for fans, I think, to have different interactions with them than they otherwise would not have. So yeah, as we saw, no idea is a bad one. We'll see how it plays out on that Saturday. And then we'll look at, okay, what were the bad ideas? What were the good ones? And what's still ahead? What can you take from that? Which I think it's exactly what you have to do when you're trying something completely brand new, something that you haven't had to do for a handful of decades.
Potentially more Matt Rule TikToks as well. If you missed that, Austin Jacobson posted that with Harper Murray. It's at huskermax.com. You can get the links to all of that. That is Nick Handley. I'm Kaleb Henry. Planning to be back on Thursday. Schedules get all thrown up because of press conferences and Huskers Radio Network and baseball and stuff. But planning to be back Thursday, 9 a.m. right here on the Husker Max YouTube page. Anything you miss, you can always get back to the Husker Max YouTube. You can go huskermax.com and Nebraska Cornhuskers on SI. Nick, looking forward to games this afternoon hosting Creighton and then at Omaha tomorrow night and then chatting again on Thursday.
Sounds good, my man.
There we go. Go Big Red.